5 days after the explosion, the interior minister said truth won't take a long time. 1 year on, and nothing has been disclosed. All Lebanese people have burning hearts and want to know the truth.
Okay, let's bring in our guest, Hiba Khodr. She's an associate professor of public administration and public policy at the American University of Beirut. Professor, 1 year since this explosion, why do we not have clear answers yet in the investigation into how this happened and who is responsible?
Well, thank you first for having me on this very sad day in Beirut, and to everybody who cares about justice, to start with, all over the world. Why do we not have an answer? That's kind of a rhetoric question. I mean, you find answer by getting people to respond. And when you have, as your guest mentioned, not only a system that has failed, but a system that does not exist, where corruption is totally embedded in that system, where it's not just a matter of not having a government, but it's also not having a whole governance system in which basically accountability, responsibility, transparency, rule of law are not existing anymore. So why don't we have a solution? Because the solution is in the hand of those who created the problem in the first place, and there's really not only a political will, but also maybe sometime a lack of will among the public, because what happened and during the blast itself is just the last straw, basically, that kind of made everything get worse. We started with the revolution, and then we had the, of course, COVID. This is in the area of healthcare, and then moving on to what we are also suffering here in Beirut and Lebanon generally, which is the financial crisis. So, yeah.
You talk about the corruption being embedded in the system. Is this more than just a failure of the political leaders? Is this a failure of the political system itself?
It's not even more a failure. We talk in political science and in public policy, we talk about a failed state. We're beyond a failed state, where you start with a weak state and then you move to a failed state. And I think what we see now is not only a stateless country, it's what they also refer to as state capture. So this is even worse when sometimes you might not have a state, but you have a public that's operating, at a certain level, and so this is really beyond a failed state, and it's a corruption that's really not just a political corruption. It's now more administrative corruption, financial corruption, ethical corruption, social corruption. So it's really a combination. The same way that everything that has culminated into what we see now, it's also, what we have now is a compounded crises, actually. So it's multiple crises that have compounded to lead to this, it didn't lead to the blast, some of it are factors that led to the blast, but it is everything together that's just not, it's beyond a blast now.
Right, and as you rightly said, Lebanon was in a very dire situation even before this explosion happened, with all these problems compounding each other. And as you said, Lebanon is beyond a failed state. Does the country have the will to change and recover economically?
What happened economically? Is that what you asked me?
I'm wondering if there is the will within the country to do what's necessary to change and to recover.
When you say the country, what do we mean by the country? Do we mean the people? I mean, of course, the people are not just willing to change; they're trying their hard, their best to change. And we saw this at the beginning of the revolution last year in 2019 in October. When we refer to the country, are we referring to the public? Are we referring to the private sector? Are we referring to the NGOs? Are we referring to the international NGOs? Are we referring to the government? So I mean, a country is not just based on a government. A country is based on. So definitely, when we talk about the public, I mean, there is a portion of the public who is living in complete despair. I mean, you start with anger, and then you have despair, and you get to a point where we don't even want to speak about resilience anymore. I mean, imagine. We're beyond resilience. We want another term to describe that we really want to make a difference. We want to do something good for ourselves, for this country, for the future, for whatever. So it's really difficult to say that is there will on behalf of the country, because we really need to identify who is working, who is willing,
Right. Okay, we'll leave it there for now. Hiba Khodr joining us from Beirut. Thank you.